Welcome to this ECA presentation on completing certification, the Electrical Installation Certificate. This is delivered by ECA Technical. Today we are going to learn about completing an Electrical Installation Certificate. This presentation is not about how to complete testing and inspection, including testing and measurement procedures. It's assumed you will have good prior knowledge of inspection and testing and relevant experience beforehand. This presentation is designed to give you assistance when completing model forms. The forms have been updated for BS 7671 Amendment 2, particularly the schedule of circuit details and schedule of test results, which are now over 2 pages. We have used the ECA model form, which is a model form based on the IET model form. Other forms do exist, and we recommend you become familiar with the forms you are using. The principal information will be the same regardless of what forms you are completing. It is important to detail exactly what electrical installation works have been carried out, i.e. if a circuit has been rewired or a consumer unit or distribution board has been replaced and is noted as so. Description of installation. This is the high level overview, i.e. replacement distribution board in Unit 3. The extent of the installation covered by this certificate is exactly what you did, i.e. replacement 24-way TPN distribution board in Unit 3, DB1, inspection and test of all final circuits including submains up to distribution boards, confirm existing earthing and bonding is adequate. The EIC or Electrical Installation Certificate will indicate whether the electrical work that has been carried out is new, so where the whole installation has been installed as new, or if a complete rewire has been carried out, an addition, and this applies if an existing installation has been modified by adding one or more new circuits, or an alteration, and this applies where one or more existing circuits have been modified or extended, for example adding a socket, or items such as a consumer unit or switching equipment have been replaced. An Electrical Installation Certificate or EIC must be used for all new electrical installations. It may also be required for an alteration or addition to the installation depending whether or not a new circuit has been installed. Where an alteration or addition is carried out but does not include a new circuit, a minor work certificate or an electrical installation certificate may be used, however a minor work certificate may be preferred. Next we look at the design section of the certificate. If a risk assessment has been completed, it should be noted, referenced and appended to the electrical certificate, and this may be for omission of RCDs, for example. It's important that that risk assessment is attached to the certificate. Next we look at the design signatories for the certificate, and there are 2 spaces here for designers, designer number 1 and designer number 2. And why are there 2? I will come on to this shortly. Designer number 1 is the organisation or person responsible for the initial design aspect, and they shall sign the certificate. This will typically be the design consultant who is responsible for the initial design of the installation. And what about designer number 2? Well, this applies where the original design has been changed or modified, usually during a construction phase, and the organisation or person responsible has adopted further design responsibility for these changes. So they will typically be the installation contractor who adopts the initial design and becomes responsible for design changes which differ from the original design, where designer number 1 is no longer party to the design process. So typically design number 2 is for on-site changes, and the installation contractor typically signs there. As this is initial verification, so this will be the very first periodic inspection for a new installation once it's put into service, the initial interval is set by the designer of the installation, so they will set when the first periodic inspection or EICR is due. Guidance on this is available from the IET in Guidance Note 3. When ascertaining the supply characteristics and earthing arrangements, the supply details are where you're getting your supply from. So on smaller installations, this will quite possibly be the origin, which you'll have free access to. On much larger installations, you quite often find you will not have access to the true source or the true origin of the installation, and therefore it could be the location you're getting your supply from. So that could be a local panel board, a local distribution board. It's important to document other sources of supply, for example solar PV, electrical energy or battery storage systems, generators, etc. When undertaking the nature of supply parameters, it should be a consideration to inquire to the local distributor for the earthing arrangement and also supply parameters to minimise any exposure to live working, so they can be measured or they can be sourced by inquiry. Just something to note is that U is your voltage between your lines, so typically that would be 400 volts, and U0 is nominal AC RMS line to earth voltage, which is typically 230 volts. When assessing maximum demand, this is listed under the particulars of installation referred to in this certificate, and therefore only needs to be recorded for what is in scope of the certificate, not necessarily the entire installation. So if you refer back to the extent of the certificate when you first started completing this form, so where an installation is entirely new, this will be the maximum demand for the entire installation. If the certificate is for an addition or alteration, then it will be the maximum demand for those additions or modifications. You don't have to take into account the entire installation. You can take into account diversity when determining maximum demand, and the IET provides an on-site guide, so the IET OSG, or the busier rule of thumb is available to help you with determining maximum demand. The schedule of inspections is now only 14 items, and the electrical certificate is only valid if the schedule of inspection has been completed to confirm that all relevant inspections have been carried out. Some may be relevant to the installation, some may not, and a full list of the example items requiring inspection during initial verification can be found in Appendix 6 of BS 7671, so the aid memoir is still there. Please remember that the schedule of inspections must be accompanied by the schedule of circuit details and test results. The ability to make comments on existing installation is new for BS 7671 Amendment 2 and gives the opportunity to document any defects in the installation which are outside the scope of works you're completing. An example would be if a consumer unit or distribution board was being replaced in one part of the installation and there was a defect you noticed not associated with these works in another part of the installation. You only need to record what is reasonably practicable. It is also worth noting that in the case of an alteration or addition, Regulation 644.1.2, and this states that for an addition and or alteration to an existing installation, any defect or omission that will affect the safety of the addition or alteration that is revealed during inspection and testing shall be corrected before the certificate is issued. So if you find problems with the circuits you're working on, you should correct those before you complete certification. The schedule of circuit details and schedule of test results have changed. These are now over 2 pages, so it's 2 pages of information, and both of these are required for your certification. And now let's look at the schedule of circuit details. So this is the first part in a 2-part form. We'll look at page 1 here, the circuit details, in just a bit more detail. So where an SPD is installed at the origin or built into the consumer unit or distribution board, this is to be recorded under the SPD details. There's an option there for type 3. Type 3s are usually associated with end user or current user equipment. Where you fitted a type 3 SPD, you can tick this box and then record in the remarks column on the schedule of test results where that type 3 SPD has been fitted. Type of wiring. So where the type of wiring is other, and there's lots of other cables out there you can be using, the type of cable installed should be noted in the remarks column again on the schedule of test results, just to give you a bit of information of what cable it is you've used. You can also attach the datasheet for that cable with the certificate once you've finished. The number of points served. So that's the total number of accessories or other connected points current using or generating equipment. So by that, a double socket or a triple socket outlet is usually just classed as a single point, so a single point of utilization. Switches such as light switches are not normally considered points, as these are passive switching devices. The maximum permitted ZS, earth fault loop impedance values. So these are taken typically from table 41.3 and BS 7671, but where other that values are used, and you can use those such as calculator or manufacturer specific data, the source of the data should be recorded in the remarks column in the schedule of test results, and the information should be appended to the electrical certificate. Where an RCBO is installed, as this device is providing both overcurrent protection and also additional protection, it will be recorded both in column 8 and column 13. So it will be recorded twice. And an example here is the 61009 RCBO. This schedule of circuit details can be used in O&M manuals, domestic handover packs, or consumer unit distribution board legends, so it's useful now being split over 2 pages. And now we'll look at the second part of the form, the schedule of test results. This is now on the second page. There's a few more boxes here to fill out with the introduction of new technologies, so SPDs and AFDDs. And one of the first things you'll notice is a new checkbox is included to confirm the operational status of the SPD. So if there is one fitted, we'd expect that to be working, especially on initial verification. Obviously, if you haven't fitted one, then the NA box would be there for you. You'll note the new insulation resistance testing requirements of BS 7671 Amendment 2. So confirm the requirements to test circuits at 500 volt DC prior to the connection of electronically sensitive equipment, and then complete with a 250 volt test post connection. You can note this in the remarks column as we've shown here. The remarks column is a useful place to document any circuit specific design details. It's a much larger column now, so there's plenty of space to write those in. So you can write things such as if the conductors increase in cross-sectional area along its run to accommodate design variations for increased ambient temperature, or if a circuit contains any sensitive accessories such as sensors, etc. So there's a lot more room now to document what you need to in these forms. So what about new technology and documenting that? Well, that should now be easier, and this is why these forms have been split over 2 pages. Let's look at the increase in use of SPDs, earth leakage relays, so RCDs and AFDDs. And these are typical examples we're going to give here. So these forms give you a lot more scope. This is not in any great detail, this is just an example of how to use the forms, and they'll be open to your own interpretation. But let's look at an air handling unit. We have an air handling unit. It may be installed on a roof some distance away, and a disconnection time of the overcurrent protector device can't be met, so the designer has opted to include an earth leakage relay to provide default protection. So the device is still an MCCB as documented, and it's been fitted with electronic protection as standard. And that's been documented here in the RCD part. Another example is an AFDD. That's been fitted because we've got a circuit in a care home, and that's been documented in the circuit details with the AFDD being recorded. And this AFDD is twinned with an RCBO with 30 mA protection, and that's been recorded too. So these forms give you a lot more scope and a lot more option when it comes to documenting new equipment. There is no limit for additional information you may wish to include or append to the electrical installation certificate. You may wish to include items such as risk assessments, and that's particularly needed if you have omitted RCD or SPD protection, manufacturer's data sheets for products and or equipment, manufacturer specific data if you're using their maximum earth fault loop impedance tables rather than those in BS7671, electric heating information, EV charger documentation, renewables and storage such as solar PV and on-site battery systems or other generation systems, diagrams, other information, commission certificates. All these can be added if required. And how can the ECA help? Well, we have a suite of editable electrical certificates. These have been updated for the 18th edition Amendment 2, and these are available free to our members. They can download from our website. To accompany that, we have a comprehensive selection of risk assessments, technical guides and bulletins available to our members, again downloadable via eca.co.uk. So check the ECA website and the app for guides and information. Our members can email us at technical@eca.co.uk or call us on 020 7313 4833. This is a presentation on the electrical installation certificate by the ECA. Thank you for listening.